Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're focusing on the electricity situation in the country today. We've got Muda Yusuf, who is the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
You focused on this yesterday, and then you did say that the government should declare a state of emergency in this sector. But you also did say that although there have been several policy pronouncements on this one, but you think one needs to be done, should be done. Is that suggesting that those policy pronouncements are not yielding the desired results, you think?
Of course, they are not yielding the desired results. You know, we had this power sector reform, the privatization and all of that in 2013. 3 years after, the situation has not improved. If anything, the situation has further deteriorated. And at a time like this, you need the private sector to come on board, to create value, to create wealth, and to create jobs. The government has been talking about diversification of the economy. My view is that you cannot diversify an economy if you don't have the energy to power it. Energy in terms of the power supply, energy in terms of gas and other form of fuel that you need to power the economy. Because there are very serious challenges now with the public power supply, as you know. I think the peak we got was about 5,000 megawatts in February. Today it's just between 2,000 and 3,000 megawatts. So the situation is very bad. Cost of diesel is well over 200 naira per liter. PMS petrol price has been reviewed following the deregulation of the PMS, 145 naira per liter. Cost of gas is very high now. In fact, from what we gather from those who are in the industrial sector, the cost of gas in Nigeria is one of the highest, if not the highest in the world. Then there's the serious issue of availability of even gas, again because of all this pipeline vandalization and all of that. So there's a major energy security issue that we are facing. Okay. Already we have issues with the external sector. Yeah. We have issues with the collapse of oil price, exchange rate, and all of that. There's very little we can do about that. But we need to build the capacity of the players in the economy to be able to respond to this situation.
But when you say the private sector should be involved,
yes,
aren't they the ones who are handling the distribution and generation?
You see, power is a peculiar sector. It's not just like any other business where you live, whether they survive or fail, it will be the headache of the shareholders. That's a serious public interest issue in power. Power is significant for the development of the economy. It's very critical for the social condition of the people. It's very critical for welfare of citizens. So we cannot just leave the power sector issue just to the business people. There is need for very serious intervention because of the bigger issues, the multiplier effects that the power situation has on the economy.
So you don't think that the role of government is primarily regulatory in this?
No. In this space, it's beyond regulatory. Because there are so many issues that we are contending with. I mean, we are talking about creation of jobs. How can you create jobs with running a business on diesel at 200 naira per liter? How can you create jobs with all these SMEs that are running small generators at 145 naira per liter? If you go to some offices now and even some shops, some outlets, they switch off their generator. They just open windows and all of that. Every time a customer comes in, they quickly switch on the generator. You don't run a business like that. The economy cannot move forward that way. So it's a situation that I would describe as an emergency situation. And government needs to do something very, very urgently and, give it the kind of the urgency it deserves. We have complaints now throughout the entire chain or the power supply chain. The gas suppliers are complaining that they are not being paid. The gas suppliers supply the GENCOs. The GENCOs say that the DISCOs are not paying them. I was at a function yesterday by the energy correspondent. The GENCOs were saying that only 30% of their invoices have been paid. Then you have the transmission company also complaining about indebtedness. You have the discos saying that they are suffering 50% loss, commercial and technical loss. You have the consumers complaining that there is no electricity and the prices are going up. So it's a major crisis across the entire chain. And we need to deal with it if we must move this economy forward.
So let's look at this complaint you talked about. Genco's complaining, the discos complaining, the transmission company complaining, yes. The citizens are complaining. Even the government is complaining of lack of funds. So how do you expect all of this to come together? How would that work?
You see, that is the challenge of governance. What we want as citizens and as investors in this economy is that we need power to function.
Should government back off completely from power issues?
Government cannot back off.
Why?
Because first, power is strategic. Power is not just like any other business. It's strategic for development. It's strategic for poverty alleviation. It's strategic for job creation. So government has to be part of it to facilitate the process. Now, if you look at the structure on ground, we have what you call the electricity bulk trader. It's supposed to insulate the GENCOs and the gas suppliers from the challenges that the DISCOs are facing. There are all sorts of agreements that have been signed. There are this power purchase agreement that have been signed between the bulk electricity traders and the GENCOs, and there's also the gas purchase agreement between the GENCOs and the gas suppliers. But because of revenue issues, revenue shortfall, these agreements have been, there's a lot of defaults.
Where is the...
And the bulk trader is supposed to be supported by government in terms of liquidity, so that you provide the necessary cushion, especially at this transitional stage.
Are they not being supported?
They are not being sufficiently supported because they are not able to meet their obligations to the GENCOs. The GENCOs are not able to meet obligations to the gas suppliers.
So are you saying it's because they can't meet their obligations, that's why they are not sufficiently supported?
No, they need funding to be able to meet their obligations. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, let's go the other way. You know, the DISCOs have often said the biggest debtor is government.
Yes, that is part of, and government, okay, the biggest debtor is government. So if the citizens too, many of them, a lot of issues of stolen electricity and the rest of it.
Collectively, the biggest debtor to the DISCOs is government. So if government is not able to pay its bills, what's the guarantee that government will be able to fund this other aspect of it?
Well, it's a question of, getting our priorities right. If you get our priorities right, government should be able to do that, because these are very fundamental issues for the development of this economy and for the welfare of the people. It's very fundamental. So it's a question of prioritization.
Do you think the government understands the importance of sorting out the power sector?
Well, I think so, but they are not doing enough, in my view. Now, we had the deregulation of the downstream sector. I was reading recently that from the deregulation of the downstream sector, that's the PMS that was moved to 145 naira per litre, that the government was going to make a savings of 1 trillion naira annually. What stops us from taking a substantial part of that to deal with this power sector issue? Because it's an emergency. Now, we have also deregulated or adopted this flexible exchange rate. We moved the exchange rate from 197, it's now about 385, going to 390 in the interbank. The major supplier of this is the CBN. So that has also brought some revenue to government, because if you are selling at 197, you are now selling at 385, 390. A lot of surplus has come in through the CBN to the coffers of government. So these are things these are opportunities we can harness to be able to, bridge all these gaps that we have in the power sector in terms of funding.
Some of what they also highlight is they think the challenge they face is much as